What is your frick this, I'm out moment? When I was a kid I worked at a yard and garden craft store as a carry-out. During the summer it was all about loading up customers' cars with sod, river stones, soil, plants and paving stones. In the winter it was Christmas trees. First year was great, my boss was amazing and the staff all generally got along. Second year he transferred out and his replacement was horrible. Sales started to dip. She joked about laying people off. Freezing because you've been loading Christmas trees outside for 4 hours in -30°C? Tough crap. Sick. Too bad you came in, you're staying. Want some water because you're loading cars in 30-degree heat? Nope. Just a generally mean person. It got to the point where I was the only full-time daytime carry-out left. Then one day I finish a shift feeling like I'd been kicked in the nuts. The pain just gets worse and doesn't stop. So I go and see my doctor. Turns out I'd torn my groin muscle. He gives me a week off and gives me a script for 2 weeks of light duties when I get back. Go and give my boss the script. She screams at me for causing her extra work and tells me to get out of her sight. Get back after the weekend, school's out so we have tons of staff. I figure I'll be doing light duties. Nope. Back to the loading area lifting paving stones. Didn't bother punching out and as the loading area for customers is right up front. I just walk out and keep going. The company as a whole went bankrupt a few years later. Actually ended up working with someone who happened to be a manager at another location and knew the situation at my old store. Turns out my former boss was fired after almost 60 people quit between June and October of that year. In 2011 or so, when companies taking advantage of the desperation of the unemployed was in full swing, the recession was on pretty hard at that time, I found myself working for a temp agency that supplied day laborers. We had to come in every day as early as possible. They opened at 5 and get your name on the list. If they got a call in from someone who needed temp workers, they called out names on the list. If you were there, you got the job for the day. They'd only call you out once though. Say you were outside having a cig or going to the bathroom. Tough crap. Furthermore, inside this place were chairs bolted to the ground facing a TV playing a safety training video on loop all day. So, one day, I actually managed to land a job. Yay. Other side of the city. I had to drive myself. Okay, fine. I get there. We spooled power cables onto giant pallets for 8 freaking hours. End of the day. They'll send us a check. A week later, I get it. It was minimum wage. And then the company took their fee out afterwards. So, you ended up getting paid, essentially, $2 below minimum wage. That's when I said frick this, I'm out. About 2 years later, I got something in the mail about a class action lawsuit against them. I can't remember what it detailed exactly, but of course I signed in on it, because frick them. 6 years later, like literally a few months ago, I finally got the payout. $8. The end. $8. Worth it. In high school I was a nanny for this family during the day. Then the mom would drop me off at Cold Stone, my first real job. The assistant manager who was always there was a completely horrid person. Looking back, she had to have been under 24 at the time. She was rude. Went in back, smoked pot on job, invited guys to come and hang with her and they were always kinda sketchy. She had it out for me. BC I was the first time employee who was trying to do a great job. I remember dreading going to work and getting that pit in my stomach because I was so terrified of her. She would always threaten to cut my hours or just do things to screw me over. One day, the mom was late to get me and drop me off at work. She came in with me. BC she knew I was scared of this girl and would get yelled at. She went up and apologized for me, said it was completely her fault. I nanny her kids. She got stuck in traffic. It won't happen again, but please don't take it out on me. This girl loses her mind. She calls the mom a B to her face, told her to F off and went on some rant that I don't remember because I was in utter shock. LOL. The mom looked at me and said, "You done here? I think you're done here." Turns to this crazy girl and goes, "You are the rudest person I've ever met. I'm sorry for how insecure you must be to act like this." She quits. She grabbed my arm and we stormed out. I was shocked and horrified. At the time I thought she had ruined my career LOL by quitting my first job for me. Looking back I think it's hysterical and wish I had a recording of it. So glad she went in with you. Worked at a residential care facility and was doing in-home care for 2 adult men with mental disabilities. The one gentleman was average, agreeable and generally just fine to work with. He ended up doing really well with me and I was tasked with things like grocery shopping, cooking and errands with him because he would actually stick to the plan and wouldn't cause a fuss. His roommate was the complete opposite. Total mama's boy who had clearly been able to do whatever he wanted his whole life. Blew his budgeted grocery money on pop and other frivolous items. It's cool, mom will be over shortly with a check for more. I understand they had the means and it was their choice, but the whole point of the living situation was to learn independence and how to lead as normal a life as possible. On to the point where I said frick it, I'm out. His mom bought him a blow-up doll. Everybody has needs. I understand, but he named it after me and would take it into the shower with him yelling my name the entire time. He was capable enough, so I never went into the bathroom, but I knew what he was doing. I had a discussion with his mom and program directors about trying to redirect this behavior because I didn't feel it was healthy. I was told by his mother that my name was common and there's no way to be sure it was me he was referring to. Then he starts getting irrationally angry with me because I won't be his girlfriend respond when he is participating in these activities. I bring it up again and it's swept under the rug. On what would be my final day working with him, he tried to pin me in a corner and kiss me. He's much larger and much stronger than I am. His roommate sees and is able to talk him down by threatening to ruin one of his games if he didn't stop. He then threw a DVD case at me, hit me square in the eye and I ended up with a black eye. Called my boss, said I was out and would not be returning as they clearly didn't listen to my safety concerns. Felt bad that his roommate still had to live with him and thanked him profusely for stepping in, though. Had been telling my boss that there was an error on the website that I cannot fix because I don't have the permissions. I mentioned this several times to him. It would take him one phone call to get it straightened out. BTW, the owner notices this error, not only calls me out in front of the whole department about not caring about my job and taking advantage of his kindness, but also makes it a point to tell me I should thank my boss for having my back. It was the last straw placed on a huge pile of awfulness. I quit the next day. And that's why you tell your boss through email ticketing system only. I don't do crap without paper trail. I was 15 working at a gas station. I wasn't scheduled to work that day and my sister was in town. I hadn't seen her for about a year. Boss called and said someone called in sick and he needs me to come into work. In the past I had been very accommodating as it was about a block from my house and easy for me to get there fast. This time I told him I couldn't come in that day because of my sister being in from out of town. I'll always remember this. He says, what's more important, your sister or your job? Frick this, I'm out. Was in Phoenix on vacation and went out with my cousin. She takes me to a party on the 3rd floor of an apartment, probably 30 people. Some girl shows up and there is some drama with some other guys not at the party. They say they're coming over to the party and there is going to be a fight. 2 of the guys at the party go to their cars, grab guns and an ammo box full of ammo. There's only one way out of this apartment and I'm not going to be there if this goes down. Look at my cousin. I don't know any of these mother suckers and I'm heading home tomorrow. Can we get the frick out of here? Grew up in Phoenix. Can confirm. Way too many people bringing guns out at parties. My friends and I were hiking in a secluded area in Maine one summer, just messing around and making a lot of noise. We stumbled upon what looked like an abandoned campsite, trash everywhere, and a desk chair set on some rocks. We took a lot of the trash and the chair with us. We were wheeling the chair down the path when we saw a stream off to the left, and wandered over to it. We spent probably 5 minutes looking at the stream. When we returned to the path the chair was gone. We hadn't heard anything. We left very quickly. Sounds like you found a homeless or a hermit person's campsite, which happens a lot here. Went to a friend's birthday party at his favorite club. Found out he'd not only invited my abusive ex, but also paid for her train ticket to come up and see him. One of my good friends let me know that she was there, and the friend I rode with was like, nope, frick this, we're out, and we went back home. Dang. Well, at least you got a couple good friends, and one butthole who you know isn't a friend. I once took a job as a grain hauling trucker. Unfortunately I picked the worst time of year to do it, which was December when everyone is trying to get their harvest into the terminal before year end. This December was also a cold one. I live in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and it was -30°C to -40°C for most of the 3 weeks this job lasted. The Peterbilt they had me in could throw little enough heat that I could feel my feet or see through the windshield, but not both. My last run went as follows. Dispatch gave me directions that took me an extra 3 hours to get where I was going. In addition to it being a much longer route, they sent me down a dead-end road with a Super B trailer, 2 medium to long trailers instead of 1 long one, and I had to drive into a snow-filled field to turn around because my other option was to back 2 connected trailers up 8 kilometers. I've never sworn so much in my life as I barely managed to not be stuck in a field in the middle of nowhere. When I finally did get to the terminal to unload, it was so late that I was the next semi in line when they closed. I was actively fighting sleep due to being cold all day and pulling a crazy long drive and being more than a bit angry. I had to drop trailer and come back the next day. All told, I put in over 14 hours for what should have been a 8-hour haul. We got paid by the loaded km, not by hour or total km, so I got paid for 4 hours. I realized that right when the terminal closed. That was the point at which I actually voiced "frick this, I'm out," despite having nobody to hear me. Just an affirmation to myself. The next morning I told them I wasn't returning to work and that I have no problem putting in 14 hours, but not if I'm getting paid for 4. And not in a vehicle that won't throw heat to the cab when it's -40 outside. I've since become an RN. I'm much happier, especially since I get paid for the hours I put in. TLDR. Got paid for 4 hours when I put in 14, while freezing cold, mostly due to getting crappy directions. Moved on with my life after saying "frick this, I'm out." Grain haulers for ethanol producers get paid $75 a year here and are home every night. When a co-worker violently punched a dent into a freezer when I told him to shut up, after months of him harassing me, and I was reprimanded, the director got a nice report after that, and he was fired 2 weeks later. I scuba dive a lot in Key Largo where reef sharks are common. Reef sharks are small for sharks and mostly scavengers, not aggressive. One day I lucked into a naturally occurring baited shark dive. There were 7 sharks in a holding pattern waiting for a snapper which was bitten and hiding. I was excitedly in the middle, getting some nice pictures. I noticed a couple of them acting a bit squilly, but wasn't too fussed about it. As one of the larger ones took its patterned route past me, it suddenly did a 180 and charged me. Man, it's easy to forget how fast and powerful they are when they want to be. I held up my camera rig to fend it off, but it made a hard turn at the last moment. Only its pectoral fin actually touched. I was very much "frick this, I'm out" at that point and went to watch from the top of the reef with other divers. I learned a couple of things though, how to better distinguish between reef sharks and small bull sharks, and that just being present around potential food sources considered provoking them. Bull sharks are the buttholes of the animal kingdom. You should get me and my sister pregnant at the same time so that they will be cousins and siblings at the same time. Crazy outweighed the hot on that one. Her identical twin sister was also a bit touched. But not touched by you, apparently. Worked as a bartender waiter in a busy city center pub. We had been getting slammed all morning, short-staffed probably. It was heck. Just as we had caught up, I took 20 seconds to grab a drink and chat to one of my favorite regulars. Just then, my new area manager walked in, spotted me, and berated me for standing around doing nothing. I tried to explain how busy it had been, but he didn't care. I got my first disciplinary in 4 years off the back of it. I was P, and handed my notice in the next day. Cutco. A friend and I went to go interview for a summer job that some random guy invited us to on our college campus. 5 minutes in we realized something about this interview was off. Who does group interviews anyways? But we were too non-confrontational to do anything about it. 10 minutes after that, after the "we're not a pyramid scheme, we're just a vertical marketing spiel," someone got up and left, and we followed. Frick MLMs. I got denied a 2 or 3% merit increase, cost of living inflation increase, at my company despite them being a leader in the market and making money hand over fist. I was in a meeting with my boss's boss and he got an email about the merit increase for one of my peers. He was already making about 75% more money than I was and got an increase. I immediately changed my status on LinkedIn and started getting bombarded with opportunities. I start a new job on the 2nd of January. Good for you, man or woman. I was poached by a company which seemed like a leader in the field. It was a good opportunity and they brought me on to build out a specific offering at their agency. Even at my old agency we had done some competitor research that basically said these guys were the best of the best. So when I got the offer, it was a no-brainer. But then I get there and it turns out the department I'm in is complete garbage. The rest of the company seemed pretty good, doing interesting stuff. But leadership didn't care about our department much and the people leading it weren't really invested. And so it was basically a bunch of junior employees just doing whatever they thought was right. I didn't really have a direct way of influencing that since I was like a support piece to the main department. I'd work on their projects for a particular purpose, but didn't have any authority over their projects as a whole. Still, I figured once I was there a while, I could push for some changes and try taking on more of a leadership role. Anyway, I'm there almost a year and I get invited to speak at an industry conference. I had spoken at some conferences before, and so that's not unusual. The speaking engagements were on my resume when I applied, and I had assumed they were seen as positives by the company when hiring me. However, they tell me I'm not allowed to go. They have a policy that speaking engagements are reserved for VPs and above. So, I ask them about making an exception, that it's a good opportunity for the agency to be represented at the conference. They won't budge. I say I can pay my own way. They still don't budge. I say I can just go as myself then, and I won't mention the agency. I have my own small company where I do similar work basically as a freelancer with a small team of people. So I could have been Claiborne from Claiborne, LLC instead, but they say it doesn't matter, that I'd still be seen as a representative of the company and they can't approve it. The conference was in Las Vegas and I had never been, so I wanted to go and decided I'd just go anyway. They're like, well, we said you can't, and I said, yeah, but I'm going. We'd have to let you go then. Okay, so I guess I was fired. I went to Las Vegas and made a little vacation of it, and it was one of my favorite presentations I've done. It was about the psychology techniques behind social media networks, and Vegas was a nice place to visit. I got to see Penn and Teller, and I lost about $300 gambling. Montgomery, Al. 2 years ago driving down south with my girlfriend. 3 AM gas stop while she's asleep. Walk into prepay. As I walk out, see a huddle of crack whores taking hits and handing their money to their pimp who's dressed in the whole 70s era pimp suit, feathered hat and cane and all. They all frick for just 20 bones, my man. I've never been back to Alabama. Similar to an unkindness of ravens or a murder of crows, a group of crack whores is called a resentment. You saw a resentment of crack whores taking hits and handing money to their pimp. I was transporting an LVAD patient to a doctor's appointment. She had some depression issues. She stops getting ready, says, you know what, I think I am done. She unplugs her LVAD and starts yelling at everybody in the room. For those unaware, LVAD is an electrical pump device for end-stage heart failure. Now when you unplug them, there is a 15-minute battery on the actual unit. When that fails it could be minutes or the patient might not go at all. Luckily for me, I was the least qualified in the room of nurses and a doc, so I just quietly left. I design these things for a living, and this comment freaks me the frick out. Was married for 14 years to a not nice to me man. We had 2 children he basically ignored. One day our 4-year-old daughter crawled into his lap for a hug. He threw her on the floor. Less than 6 months later, money saved, belongings packed, and I was out of there with the kids. Even though he told me I wouldn't be able to make it without him. Never looked back. Good for you. When my college professor required us to sign up for a class at a different college and pay full price to get credit for his class, I said frick this and dropped out. That sounds horrendously illegal. I worked at a dog daycare for 8 years, which was also my first job ever, and poured every bit of my heart and soul into working there. Well, not in the beginning because I was young and wild lol, but for the last 5 or so years I got a much better work ethic and took it seriously. I started at $6.75 and worked my way up to $10 after many years. The work was exhausting and emotionally draining. The way the managers ran things, there would often be dog fights, or they would put a huge group of young dogs together and the person watching that yard would be so stressed the whole time trying to keep track of 15 crazies. I had been there the longest and the dogs listened to me pretty well, so I would often get put in the most stressful yards. I noticed a trend when I was allowed to make the play groups. It was always peaceful because I knew how to group dogs based on age, temperament, play style, etc. But when anyone else did it, one or more yards would always be complete chaos. The manager never listened to my suggestions for grouping dogs, even though I was out there with them for 6+ hours a day and she was out there for maybe an hour a day. That among other things, I would often come in hours early and stay late to help out with cleaning and other things. Working conditions were rough. We were forced to stay outside in freezing temps and rain and blazing sun despite there being indoor play areas to use. It was a hassle to get dogs in and out, so managers dragged their feet on letting them play inside. Full stop. Some days there felt like literal heck. Management treated me and my co-workers poorly, but I loved the dogs, so I stuck with it. It wasn't a coincidence that I developed a more severe depression than ever before in my last few years there. All of this incessant rambling just to get to my breaking point. Which looking back was pretty stupid, but I was so fed up with how tough that job was and how little recognition I received, or good pay for that matter, that I couldn't take it anymore. I had to call out due to being sick, and when I came back the next day my co-worker gave me crap for leaving them hanging like that, which really peed me off because she was one of the shittiest, most unreliable people on our team. The manager was on her side. There were so many days where I had to struggle due to understaffing or call-outs, and countless times where I came in on days off to fill in for someone. The fact that they couldn't treat me with a shred of decency after being out for one day was infuriating. So I literally said, "Frick you, I'm out, bye," turned around, clocked out, and left that place never to return. Never regret my decision despite how sad it was to leave all of my dog pals behind. I'm sure they forgot about me soon enough. The night a guy I dated for years ran through the front door of our apartment sideways, yelling, "Honey, I know you don't approve of hard drugs, but I just smoked crack and it was awesome." Honey, I know you don't approve of hard drugs, but I just smoked crack and it was awesome. This sounds like the opening line of a stand-up routine. You got a belly laugh out of me. I was on a job interview for a dog daycare boarding kennel. It was very old-fashioned and had been there for 50+ years. For those who don't know, old school dog training is basically just abusing the dog into obedience. Anyway, the dude interviewing me was asking me how I would call over a dog that was across the yard, get their attention. I forget what my response was, but he said he throws a Kong at them. At first I thought he meant like, threw it near them or against the fence to get their attention. But no, he meant he actually pelted the dogs with the Kong. For those who don't know, Kongs are heavy dog toys made from thick rubber that really hurt if dropped or thrown at you from even a short distance. I was horrified. Needless to say, I didn't accept the job there. Went to a borderline abandoned mall in my town and started exploring one of the abandoned restaurants. Got inside, walked into the back where it was dark, noticed the words "Get Out" written in red on the wall, turned around and walked straight out. This was at one of my friend's birthday party, which he held at the last thing open at the mall, a really cool arcade place. But since the rest of the mall was abandoned, we all ran around and did stupid things. And to make it better, we were all eating from a massive tub of sour gummy worms that my friend had found, unopened, in a dumpster. So honestly, the fact that we chose to walk out while high on sugar was probably a miracle. I had something similar as a teen. We were exploring a barn just outside our village that, as far as we knew, had been abandoned for a couple of decades. We went inside and saw "If I catch you here, you're dead" written on the wall. We probably weren't the first ones to venture into this man's living place, and he was most likely sick of it. Nevertheless, a really scary experience for a 14-year-old. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.